A fox had by some means got into the storeroom of a theater. Suddenly he observed a face glaring down on him and began to be very frightened. But looking more closely, he found it was only a mask such as actors use to pull over their face. Ah, said the fox, you look very fine. It is a pity you have not got any brains.
The program you are about to hear is fiction, science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction, fiction, fiction.
Veiled salutations, Cognonautics. Welcome to Exofathom, the show where we dare to explore the outer reaches of our thought and feelings sometimes, but mainly thoughts. I'm Mike, and always I'm joined by my two lovely co-hosts, Nick and Ayla. Nick, how you doing?
Hey man, good Monday to you. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. It's a little
Wonderful.
rough, a
Yeah,
little hungover, but we'll make it through. It'll be
we
awesome.
will. We will indeed.
How about you, Ayla? How you doing?
I'm okay. I like you last week. This week I actually got to take a nap today, so I feel very chill and easygoing. So also hanging in there too.
Aren't naps the best?
Oh my gosh. And it was in the sun. I have this hammock in my backyard. And my dog was being really cute and I was petting her. And I just drifted asleep. And then I woke up and I was like, "Oh man, I napped in the sun." I haven't done that since I think maybe I was like a kid.
Yeah, that sounds so peaceful.
Yeah, it's
so nice.
awesome.
Cool. So today I kind of want to talk about the persona. This kind of builds upon like the collective unconscious stuff that we talked about a while back. Um, so I guess first off, what is a persona to you two, or what ideas come to your mind when you hear the word persona?
Um, for me, I mean, instantly I kind of think of an outward facing, you know, presentation. Um, Kind of a facade, kind of a I don't know. I mean, like there's a little bit more to that, but yes, an outward presenting presentation of the self.
Nice, nice. I think that's well said.
Mhm.
Ayla, what do you?
Well, I like the image we have today. I think of, yeah, like that external mask that can change, from situation to situation. I also, for some reason, thought of persona non grata, which now I know it's not a good thing, but I can't remember this explicit like definition of it. But
I mean, it depends on your point of view, right? Like, it's
what's
like
non
being
grata mean?
it's like being not welcomed, pretty much. It's like being a
Oh.
pariah of sorts, like a social outcast.
Hmm. Yeah, then I guess if you're being outcasted by a bunch of bad people, then yeah, you're probably wise to be of that class.
I got into a huge argument in my AP English class one day with my teacher over whether or not it's a good thing to be a pariah.
Well, I don't even know what a pariah is. No, I'm sorry, I get real specific. I don't even know how to spell that. Pariah.
It almost sounds like you're saying piranha.
Kind of. I have piranha jewelry that came up. I can't spell this word. If you know how to spell pariah, leave it in the comments.
Leave it in the comments. Well, a pariah persona, like that could be a fun tongue twister, is definitely something. But according to Jung, a persona is the social face that the individual presents to the world, a kind of mask, which is why I went back to that Aesop fable with the cold open of the fox and the mask, how it could be so frightening, but really it's just presentation, right? And I think when we first talked about our collective unconscious thing, I kind of made it akin to like a UI in computing, where it's just the look of the thing, the presentation. There's no brains behind it. It's simply a mask that one can wear. But yeah, it's a kind of mask designed on one hand to make a definite impression upon others, and on the other, to conceal the true nature of ourselves. And sort of like the situation I like to go to, especially in LA, is you always go to a party, right? And the mask that we end up wearing is sort of like a what do you like is the thing that we do. It's like our whole identity is defined by the job that we have, which is probably one of the worst ways to define your persona. It inhibits any sort of psychological growth. Right? Would you agree? Or like, I'm sure you guys ran into that question at the party. Or even
well,
on
we
dates and stuff.
all wear masks, Mr. Ipkiss, metaphorically speaking. If you get the reference, then you know.
You're
no,
old.
no,
Super sad.
it's from The Mask.
Yeah.
Ben
I haven't
Stein.
seen that movie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been a while.
I need to see it again.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean, though. I mean, like, we all kind of do have this sort of game face that we can call it. But yeah, I do think that building your outward persona based around solely your occupation is a little bit, I mean, it literally is one-dimensional. So you'd probably be better off not being a one-dimensional person.
Right. Here's the crazy thing, though. There was a Gallup poll done, I think like in 2014, where 55% of Americans get some sense of identity out of their job.
Well, I would hope that everybody gets a sense of identity out of their job. I just don't think that it should be the entirety of your identity. Like we all work, and hopefully we're doing things that we enjoy. Sometimes not, but I think everybody would like to get to the point where we're doing something we enjoy. And I think that just intrinsically that you integrate some of that into who you are.
Yeah, well, just to add my 2 cents there to your first question, I think that, if you're like at a party and somebody's trying to get to know you and they ask that question, it's either like, I don't know, for me, if I hear that question, I'm kind of like, oh, you just want like a connect. I'm going to go find the dip or something like it's not an interesting question. So it tells me a lot about a person if that's what they say, or it's just that convivial chit chat that everybody does, and you just kind of go, oh yeah, you just say like some generalization and then ask them what they are, because they might just be wanting to talk about their job. So they could be that 50% that like really identify with what they do. And I think Nick's right. Like, it's cool to have a job that you're really passionate about or aligns with things that you do, like if you're an artist and you do graphic design work, I can see those two kind of working well together. But I also feel like there is something to be said for having identity beyond just your vocation, like there's so many different parts of ourselves. It's like a shame to just rely on that one.
So, and I guess we're like sort of circling how we craft our persona, right? I guess that's what we're kind of dancing around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you?
If it's ours to craft.
Oh, do you think it's somebody else's to craft?
I don't know. I've been wondering that. Like I don't know. Like, yeah. Well, okay. So like if you have an artist and you have the audience, there's that dynamic, right? Like the artist makes a sculpture, but it's kind of like an ink blot looking thing. And the audience is like, it's a duck. No, it's a plane. No, it's this, it's that. And so if that material has life, that's like us, it's like, how are we? I don't know. Like if I tell myself that I'm a good person, but I do jerky things all the time, am I a good person or am I a jerk? Right? Like there's that external world that you interact with, maybe.
Well, part of it definitely has to be somebody else's interpretation of that persona, right? Like, so it's definitely maybe an equal, maybe it's unequal. I don't know what the mixture is, but there's certainly a percentage of the persona that has to deal with how other people see you. I mean, that's the point of the persona to begin with. So yeah, perhaps there is a good amount of the persona that isn't really decided by you, because you can present yourself in a certain way, but if people don't take you that way, then are you that persona?
How can you elaborate a little bit more?
Well, yeah. So I mean, like if you try to present yourself as somebody who's tough, or you know, uh, like a hot shot. I'm trying to think of like the stereotypical masculine overpresentation of masculinity. And then you get knocked out by a guy half your size. Like the persona is that person's persona is that he's a tough guy, but everybody else just saw him get leveled. So really his persona isn't necessarily that of a tough guy because everybody understands that that's not who he is.
So like we shouldn't let our ego dictate our persona.
Yeah, well, that I would definitely say that that's probably a good thing for sure. But I just also think that sometimes we might be lying to ourselves about who we think we are.
Yeah, I mean, like this process of building our mask, or crafting it, because it is something I think that we craft over our lifetime, right?
Mm-hmm.
It does work on like a social feedback sort of thing, but it can become really, I think it can become really dangerous to let others influence that process a bit too much. Like everybody sort of lies to themselves, right? I think it's actually a coping mechanism in some cases,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it can be dangerous to let that line to yourself, to keep your ego strong, also affect your persona. But now we're saying that the ego is different than the persona.
Well, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure if there's a difference, but I mean, it would seem to me that we would have to definitely make sure that you're not. Yeah, it's all in balance, right? So you don't want to be the type of person that lets other people govern the way you see yourself. Certainly, but as a participant in society, I don't know if you have a lot of say in that matter most of the time. Because even if you think about things like getting a bank loan, it doesn't matter what you think of yourself. It matters what the bank teller or the broker thinks of you. So that there is instances in the life that we live that our persona really relies heavily on what other people might think.
Yeah, I mean, too, like you can definitely influence somebody's um you can influence somebody's opinion of your persona, right? So if I
Mm-hmm.
walk into the bank wearing a suit, really clean hair, clean shaved, that bank teller might be more likely to want to work with me a bit if my I don't even know what the heck they base. Like my credit score is low or something like
Right.
that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whereas
Mm-hmm.
if I just walk in with two different shoes on, they look like they haven't been washed ever. I'm in jeans, my hoodie, that sort of thing, like a
Yeah.
big old tear in it.
They
Either
might
I'm
think you're a billionaire.
yeah, that's the only thing. Right?
Good
Either you're a
point.
billionaire
Yeah.
or what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just takes a
Totally.
credit score run. But
Right.
those outward appearances, right, it's how it's how you can influence it. It's not really. I don't think it's necessarily I don't think appearance is necessarily based on ego. I think it might be another component to your persona.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that you have to I don't think that caring about your persona or your outward perception of yourself is necessarily ego driven fully. I think that there are people who are considerate about how they want to interact in the world as well. And that doesn't seem to me as much of an ego driven sort of pursuit uh, as much as more maybe a harmony seeking pursuit.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
I love
would.
this stuff. Sorry,
And
I'm appreciating the conversation. I just
no,
came out
you're
loud.
good. No, it's all good. Yeah, no, I would agree. Like this sort of harmonious steps starts to become or steps towards harmony becomes a self-analytic thing, right? Where you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to figure out what are the things you can be conscious of, such as your appearance, right? Um, and what are things that are laid within this unconscious side of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you might have a short temper or something
Yeah.
like, and that becomes part of your persona as well, right? if you're getting irritated that the banker is taking a long time looking up bank loans because I don't know, they have a bad network connection or something.
Yeah, totally.
That yeah, then it can ruin the whole thing, right? And then that it doesn't matter how you look now. That
Yeah, you screwed it up.
unconscious side, yeah, that
Yeah.
unconscious side of you is now making things awful.
Right. And maybe perhaps the persona is constructed purposely to keep those um, less a presentable facets of a personality away from the spotlight.
Correct. Um, but there's an interesting thing that happens though, where like the more you try to control those bad sides of you, the more like heavy-handed you get,
Mm.
the more it can build and
Oh, yeah.
becomes this bigger action that now you start to, transform into your shadow self, where the persona is enveloped by this shadow. Or even worse, you start to psychologically regress, right? And you start to like to enable to consciously build our personas, we have to first dissolve our initial persona, like whatever it is that has been built naturally through this unconscious interact or through these semi-conscious interactions with society,
Hmm.
right? And if that short temper starts to eat up everything, then you get this thing where you've dissolved into your shadow self.
Yeah. Yeah. Ideally, I guess the persona isn't a suppression tool, more as a masking tool. I don't think that you would want to use. I don't think that you would want to use the persona as an excuse to repress your baser, perhaps not negative, but just counter civil impulses. So, yeah, for sure.
But then how do we, because you still need some sort of ethical outlet for that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah,
Like you can't simply.
No, you can't repress it. It only makes it worse. I mean, the best that you can do is find outlets for it that are socially acceptable. Like people who have anger issues, like the socially unacceptable thing is to take that anger out on somebody else. Now there are loopholes for that. You can definitely get into some sort of martial arts. You can get into boxing. You can get into heavy workouts. There's a way to release that sort of valve in a socially functional way that maintains your persona without letting the without suppressing the lesser qualities of yourself.
Yeah, no, definitely. And this goes into, I think, parts of like constructing a new persona, right? Because if your persona was the person that always, if my persona is like, I'm the guy that yells at everybody, or I'm the guy that takes my anger out on people around me.
Mm-hmm.
And now that has been moved towards, I'm the guy that boxes, I'm the guy that does heavy workouts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you present this new persona towards other people, they've never seen the persona that was yelling at all the people around you or something like that. So
Right.
have you become like a new person entirely?
Well, I'd like to let's see, share a quote here, because it came to mind when you were talking about just kind of like who we are to ourselves versus who we're perceived to be. And there's a really great Einstein quote, and I'm sure you've heard it. It's everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is stupid. And I think that that's kind of to your point in terms of this like schism that can happen with personas, is that, like I think there's two things. There's your persona that people know you as you become. There's your internal persona, and then at the same time, the they could be treating you like a fish when you're really a bird, or no, treating you like a bird when you're a fish. No, wait, a monkey if you wait. This quote used to have fly and not climb. I don't know if this is the right quote, but you know what I mean. It's like that kind of.
Well,
okay.
and to answer or to respond to your question, Mike, I think that you do become a new person, and I think that that's kind of the purpose of life. I mean, if our cells completely regenerate every 7 years. We're technically a biologically new person every 7 years. Why should we not be psychologically new every once in a while?
No, like you start to get into those, rebirth myths that we've been talking all about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the interesting thing is, though, in a weird way, even if you've been, judged as a bird when you're a fish, or you've become psychologically renewed, there are still points where your persona will slide backwards, especially as you're constructing this new mask, right? You're constructing this new persona of sorts. I'm now the guy that boxes, but I'm in Target and the line is just way too long, and this lady's taking, or yeah, the checker lady's taking just slow and checking all these items out, and now I'm getting mad and I just start, I don't know, yelling at my partner or something like that, or doing little things to lash out like that.
Yeah, because I don't think that necessarily, as I said, I don't think that the persona is a prescription to your psychological shortcomings. I think it's a tool and function, that you utilize in society. I don't think that it necessarily, creating a new persona doesn't keep the monsters away. It's just passing the buck down the road, kicking the can down the road, so. I mean, I don't know if you can utilize the persona as a way of therapizing as a way of therapeutically sort of like healing your emotional issues.
I think you can use it as a form of self-therapy. I think you can't, like, if you spend a lot of time consciously making masks and you are aware in the moment of like, oh, I'm getting this feeling, it's building up, I'm going to say something stupid or something like that. I think you can at least use it to become more aware of the moment that's about to happen, being more present in that moment, I guess.
Yeah, well, I definitely agree, and I think that that's probably a function of being socially told what you're doing is unacceptable, right? So, if nobody tells somebody who lashes out in an emotionally violent or physically violent way that that's unacceptable, do they really know? So, I mean, yeah, there definitely is a little bit of social guilt that we carry when we do things that are disharmonic. And I think that that's what it really comes down to, is this disharmonic. I keep putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable. I keep putting, but I think that there's something about this like fear of disharmony within society that we all kind of innately have, and then some of us who don't, but we call them sociopaths. But yeah, so there is something that's kind of like social policing of the psyche involved as well. And so perhaps you can utilize that sort of upstanding citizen persona to tamp down some of your more, as I said, civilly unwanted tendencies. But I don't know if that exactly helps 100% remedy those. I mean, and I think you've gotten to this too, is like, even if you do change your persona, you're going to have slipbacks and you're going to be reverting, which to me would suggest that there's a deeper underlying issue.
No, definitely. But I think those deeper underlying issues is what makes us human, right? Like, you can have like fighters who are completely one person in the ring and then a completely different person out of the ring, right? They've changed their masks, so to say, but they both are still the same person with the same baseline experiences and faults and flaws. Yeah. So it's not, I guess I can agree with you where it's not so much a remedy, but just a way to have rapid personality change within the moment if you spend your time hermetically constructing these masks. That makes sense.
Well, and yeah, what better way to channel that sort of baser energy of violent tendencies than being somebody who puts on a mask in an octagon and knocks the living daylights out of somebody. I mean, if you can't do that in society, which society says you cannot, then you have found a conduit in which to direct that energy. And, that's why most fighters that, are pummeling people, on a day-to-day basis are pretty chill people because they've gotten all of that out of their system. And they continue to. And, anytime they feel that sort of buildup, that, that sort of social repression going on, they can go into the ring and just, start throwing hands.
Yeah. And the humbling effect too, being knocked on your ass, I'm sure helps a lot too. It's what I enjoyed about skating a lot. Like, the second you think your skills are just a little bit better than they really are, you probably end up breaking a bone. Yeah.
I've had so many of those before where it's like the moment I started feeling like competent in what I was doing, I've hurt myself completely. And it's always that little reminder of like, hey, don't get too cocky with yourself, No.
I'm also interested in like too as personas for like acting, right? Because actors, they seem like this would be the most, like that's what they do. They build these personas, right? And trying to put on this mask and channel that sort of energy out on a stage or in a film or on TV, whatever. The thing I find interesting is that I wonder if switching masks so many times, there's like leftover residue on their base persona, or even if they have a base persona.
Yeah, that's interesting. That reminds me of kind of like Gary Oldman, right? He went through so many acting roles that he lost his original accent and had to take classes to get it back. So yeah, I think that there is definitely something there that you can lose yourself along the way putting on so many masks. And that's an interesting sort of commentary about what the self is. If you have an illustrious career of acting and you've been in so many roles, who is that person? Well, one can argue that, that person is who they are when they are not acting. But then there's also this second entity almost that is this individual who's able to put on multiple masks.
Yeah, and then I wonder too, like how it plays out in their like more personal relationships, right? Because I'm sure it has to affect some of those relationships in some way or another.
Oh, it's got to be brutal, honestly. Like, I don't necessarily envy actors at all. It's you like, and it's a no wonder that so many of them start to have, sort of mental and emotional issues. Like you just, it's not an easy job. First of all, you're there for 16 hours a day waiting for your time to be on camera, maybe for a couple hours. And then, you come back the next day and you're supposed to be in this sort of character your whole, for whatever run the production is taking, which could be, a year or whatever. You're kind of this person. You're away from your family a lot of the time. You're surrounded by new people, so you're constantly kind of like reimagining yourself. And I can see where that can kind of like losing touch and like not having your feet on the ground can lead to emotional distress.
Yeah. No, I think what we're getting to is this notion of the absence of the persona, right? Which is, I'll just read this. So the human with no persona is blind to the reality of the world, which from him or her has merely the value of an amusing or fantastic playground. Inevitably, the result of the streaming in of the unconscious into the conscious realm, which we can define as a channeling, an archetype from the collective unconscious down to this acting role, right? Simultaneously with the dissolution of the person's persona and the reduction of the directive force of consciousness is a state of disturbed psychic equilibrium. Those trapped at such a stage remain blind to the world, hopeless dreamers, spectral Cassandras, dread it for their tactlessness, internally misunderstood, So this is like the fish that always thinks it's a bird or something, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't understand the persona of itself being a fish.
Or
And
or yeah, the hippie wild child that wants to go live in the woods and not participate in society. You know, it's that same sort of concept because I really see the persona as a tool of functioning within society. Like it seems to be that its most, at least part of its biggest use is that. And so, when you have these kind of wayfarers of persona, where they kind of don't really ascribe to anything, then it makes it really hard to place them anywhere. And perhaps that's where you get things like the hermit in the mountain or whatever. But then again, is that a persona in of itself?
could be. And one either
Could be.
It probably is noticed. One that's either constructed by the hermit or, um, forced to be made because the environment told them they were a hermit.
Mm-hmm.
But are we all familiar with the tale of Cassandra? Should I just dive into that real fast?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
All right. So the Greek god Apollo really liked this chick Cassandra, who is a princess, and he gave her a gift of being able to tell the future. And depending on the source, either she rejects him or doesn't, or takes him in, or like, yeah, I think depending on the source, it's either she rejects him or this is like a bit of enticement and she doesn't follow through on a task that he has for her. But he, instead of taking away this gift, Apollo, in his fit of rage, curses her with the fact that nobody will believe her. So she has all these true prophecies to which no one believes her.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
much
believe-
like the persona, right? Like the spectral, they're so misunderstood as hermits, as
Mm-hmm.
wild childs, as actors, actresses, as
The
you know,
pariah.
the pariah, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. Oh, and I
Uh,
think Cassandra was in the tale of Troy, right? Where she says, beware of Greeks bearing gifts. I think that's what she says. And the Trojans don't listen to her and let the horse in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just what
She's
give
got
the
a
Greeks
terrible
their
life.
gift? There's Zeus. Don't accept anything from Zeus.
Yeah. Don't accept gifts from Greeks. I think that still applies to today. So
Wow.
Just wow. What? Do you like Greek gifts?
Would I have the occasion to accept a Greek gift? Yes, I probably would like it.
No.
fair enough.
Well, then I hope you like your Trojan horse.
Well,
Yeah.
I like gifts, okay.
That's fair. So, what do you think is the sort of goal to all this? Persona crafting, mask crafting. If we can, make multiple masks which we interface the world with. Like for example, when I walk into a restaurant. If I'm door dashing, I act much different than when I'm just a patron. Right? But at the end, what is the goal for these personas? Is it just social equilibrium, or is there?
Yeah, I would say cohesion. Cohesion and the path of least resistance in a lot of ways. And we tend to, as humans, like to find the easiest way from point A to point B. So putting on masks that fit the occasion probably seems like the most efficient way to handle things. Like you're saying, when you go into a restaurant, and you're on the clock, you're working, you have your work persona on. I mean, I know my work persona is totally different than my regular persona, and my social persona is totally different than my sitting on the couch persona, so it's like I think that there's utility in being able to tweak your sort of your personality in order to maximize cohesion and efficiency.
So sort of like going with the flow, but for the greater good.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk things like social contract theory, right? So, like we all voluntarily do things as a society to keep things kind of flowing easily. Now, not everybody does that, and there's certainly exceptions to the rules. We all know them, we all see them, we all curse them out. So, but I definitely think that most people want to sort of interact within the society in a manner that offers the least amount of resistance.
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally that would be nice, but I can make a strong argument that sometimes being able to don an abrasive persona is necessary to deal with people.
Well, certainly when you're dealing with an abrasive person, and yeah, that's where I kind of place those exceptions. I think that what I would say is that the normal state of a running society or social system is harmony. Now, of course, there are going to be times where that harmony is disrupted, and sometimes those are necessary. But I think that the inert state or the inert desired state is harmony.
Yeah, I mean, harmony out of safety. Go for it, Ayla.
It's funny because you guys have such a nice flow. It's almost as if like we're on a freeway and you guys are going 40 miles an hour and I'm on like the right shoulder trying to go like 50, like zoom.
If we're going 40 miles an hour on the freeway, we are breaking the social contract theory.
Yeah. and as far as breaking social contract, I like to go 90. That's sort of my safe speed.
Right.
That's terrible. I didn't hear that. He's lying.
He's lying.
listening.
Yeah, this is a comedy podcast.
Yeah. The
It's never
disclaimer
kept
at
me
the
alive.
beginning. Yeah. Except for the fact that we say we can't guarantee how long this will remain fiction.
Mhm.
So he could go 90 tomorrow. But up until this point, I don't know for
It
sure.
hasn't
man.
happened yet.
Yeah.
Nope. Little
but
do you
no,
know I'm actually driving.
Oh God.
Currently.
Yes.
Great audio though.
Thanks.
Now I think it's funny that Nick brought up the society angle because I kind of went more that what word did you make up? Therapizing?
Yeah.
Is that therapy?
Yeah, therapizing.
Can I get a definition, please?
It's the act of therapizing.
Yourself. Being your own therapist, working through your personas, that kind of stuff. But okay, so we have an Oculus Quest 2, and there's a mindfulness meditation app that I've been playing with. And it's interesting because one of the guided meditations is on manifesting, which, whether that's something that everybody can do or that's just what some people say they did because they just get things handed to them and they don't want to feel bad. I don't know. But what was interesting was that they said there was a big importance in saying like, I want and I have, or I want to be, or I am. And, I think there's also a documentary just called I Am. And it's just kind of interesting because what she said in the meditation was that, let's say you say, I want abundance in my life. By saying the word want, you put distance, and that implies a sense of lack. So you actually want to say, I have abundance in my life, or I am abundant. And the reason I bring it up is I feel like this persona shift, it really can be used in that therapizing sense. Let's say you want to be an artist, but you're not really confident. You haven't taken enough classes, blah, 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 blah. Well, I mean, like, whatever, just own it. Say, you know what, I'm an artsy person. And then say, you know what, I am an artist. And you just do what artists do. And that's because that's who you are. Like, I don't know if that's a great example, but do you know what I'm kind of talking about? This idea of using it to guide you, maybe?
I get it, but I worry a little bit in the sense that you're using not your persona to guide you, but your ego. This I am an artist. This I am abundant. I am. Those maybe abundant might be a bit more on the persona level, but at least
So if you take ego out of it, what I am kind, or is that ego driven too?
And maybe it depends
could
on
be.
why you
Well,
want.
there's nothing inherently negative about ego, too. By the way, I think we're stigmatizing the word a little bit here because a healthy amount of ego is good for this healthy psyche. And it doesn't. You don't have like this concept of just kill your ego, man. Just don't have like that's malarkey. It's malarkey. I'm
Well, and I
sorry.
think with all things, balance is key, right? Like
Yeah,
you definitely want to
absolutely.
have a balance. But I think like let's say you're trying to shift out. So, you were known as being an anger ball. You want to become less angry. You might choose to tell yourself, I am a calm person. And that's what you tell yourself. And you remind yourself of that, and it helps guide you. But in terms of like the persona, like, I don't know, do you go buy a bunch of like, life is good shirts and mugs with strong vibes, calm mind on it? I don't know. I mean, like, like,
No,
I
I
don't
would
know
say that
what
you
feeds
act
into that
calmly.
persona.
It's
Yeah. Well, yeah.
your actions. It's your
You may-
Right.
actions in society that
And right.
reinforce
And
it.
so what I'm saying is that the way you're talking to yourself, that persona, like, does it start with that intention? That may or may not be driven by ego, but that's just, I don't know, with that meditation and what you were talking about, I was wondering, like, where's the timeline? Where does the persona begin?
Oh, the persona probably like start crafting it when there's that you start crafting it when you start to go out to the world. So between the ages of like 6 and like 8 or 9 or 12. I think it might be
Hmm.
in the show notes, but
Ah, well,
you start to craft your first masks when you start to interact with others, like Nick was saying with with society. And I do think that ego is is a great material to build, to start to make the clay that you use to make the mask. I think it can be useful, but as a guiding force, it can be a little dangerous. And ego death usually leads to with the dissolving of one persona, or heaven forbid, the absence of your own persona, where you lose any sort of self identity. Right? Again, going back to the fish trying to be a bird or a monkey or whatever, not really realizing that it is a fish. And so,
well, yeah.
because I think that's what we're. I mean, that's what I'm interested in is how we craft personas and how quickly they can be crafted.
Yeah, no, I think this is such an interesting conversation because like there really are a bunch of ways you could talk about this. I'm still interested in this um heated conversation you had about pariahs. Should circle back to that. It's Piriah for those listening. I learned how to spell it.
Awesome.
But no, thank you. But yeah, no, I think like you could you could be a fish or you could be a monkey that can climb trees, right? And then, but you're thrown into a social setting at a young age, and everyone's just like, oh, well, you're in the monkeys, come with us. But you're a fish, you don't know it, and they don't care. They just stick you there or something. And I think that, like, what's interesting is, like, do you get a sense that you're not a monkey and start kind of like your persona builds as that contradiction, or do you try so hard to be a monkey and then you realize one day you're a fish or so? I don't know. Like, I think, yeah, like personas.
Can we use animals that are even slightly close to each other?
I don't know why they said climb. I mean, if I know, I swear it was a fish and a bird, but I don't know why
I mean,
this
like the ugly
quote.
duckling and the swan is probably a better
Well,
metaphor.
I think
Oh, the ugly
I-
duckling and the swan.
but let's
Yeah.
make our life difficult here. I mean, why not? Oh, look at a dog.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
she had to speak up
Oh.
for the animals. I will go check there's no murderer outside, and I will be back.
Yeah. Jeez Louise.
All of a sudden, I guess if I just start talking to myself, then I know what happened.
Oh my gosh. I know. Well,
No,
she's yeah.
but like, I think though having them so far apart is kind of good because it, like, as somebody who has, who likes to build personas, you do have to look in the mirror and deal with yourself and deal with the personas that you've made, whether they be good or bad. I think the
Yeah.
most harmful ones for me have been dictated by the environment that I've been in.
Mm.
because out of empathy you can look at people and say, oh, I could be on that path, I could be on that other person's path, you know. And as they ask you certain questions about yourself, certain activities, you start to get into this persona debt, right?
Yeah.
Even if you don't do things. So for example, if somebody asks me if I'm a heavy drinker, and I never drink, right? But in that environment, I want to be a heavy drinker. So I say, yeah, sure. I have now gone ahead and in my persona built this persona debt. And I'm stealing that from technical debt. But this persona debt where now I have to heavily drink in order to show that essentially I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, yes, yeah, there are definitely pitfalls that you can plunge yourself into, and I think that ultimately the most harmful sort of personas are the ones that are not based in any sense of truth. Not to say that every persona has to be 100% genuine. I think that you can use small percentages of truth to create a fictional persona for sure. But the ones that are most harmful are the ones that have no bearing of truth within your personal self.
yeah, but still now in the name of social cohesion, right? Because if this is a
Yeah.
group of heavy drinkers and I am not a heavy drinker, I won't be around for the heavy drinking and start to become an outsider because it's not that social group is now broken a bit, right?
Certainly. Yeah. 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 I mean, and it gets into the parameters of what you define as a harmonic relationship. Like if you want to be around those people who are heavy drinkers, yes, you have to become a heavy drinker. You know, and yeah, I mean, like that's kind of an issue. That's an issue that we all have to face. And it's really just kind of like figuring out what you, so I guess, you know, your point of looking in the mirror is correct. You have to know who you are first before you can start playing make believe, you know, because if you don't know who you are first, then you're going to have really no bearing on who you could be.
Yeah. And then, well, through this process of multiple make believes, right? Exploring multiple personas, I think even in parallel, right? One of my favorite examples is like if I ever became a teacher, what I would love to do is like in my first period class be really nice, and then in my second period class be really strict and mean, and then by recess that you can talk to each other. You know,
They're all
friends in
confused.
class. Yeah, they're all
Gaslight your students.
Yeah.
and just keep doing that throughout the day until I figure out, oh, do I like to be nice or do I like to be strict and mean? And then now through playing this quest of being like make believe, I've found a sense of myself. Like if I look in the mirror and oh man, I called little Joey an idiot. Like that didn't
Wow.
feel good.
You
Well,
raise
that's
a
a-
really good point. Sorry, Nick, just to it's really short. Oh damn it. I have these points and they lose so oh, I know what it was. It was that idea of do you think our teachers have a moment when they realize they're a specific type of teacher?
Oh, well, yeah, they're teachers.
No, but I mean
You don't
like
think that they consider themselves?
well, I don't know, like what Mike was saying, right? Like, yeah, do they purposely decide I want to be the crabby teacher or the slacker teacher or the funny teacher, like the caring, supportive teacher? Like, do they make like,
I think it's based on their awareness, whether
yeah, and
they're
the,
aware of things like psychology, if they've studied abroad. Like if they're extremely specialized, and they may not, their environment may inform them of how they become like that type of teacher. But I think if they have a broad background, or at least have done enough caring to study philosophy and psychology, then they can kind of construct this persona to be like, oh, I want to be the strict teacher, or I'm trying to be the nice teacher, or something like that.
But you touched upon a really interesting point as well within that sort of teacher metaphor, which is transgression is key to self-understanding. And so, you know, you're talking about how like, oh, I called this kid an XYZ and that didn't make me feel good. Well, that's that transgression. That's that stepping outside of the social box. So sometimes we do need to step outside of the box in order to understand what is good and not. You know, and I think that that's an important sort of understanding too, is that sometimes you do have to break sort of the social rules or even your own inner rules in order to understand that those are rules in the first place. You know, I think we had this conversation not too long ago where like I had a flusterous morning and some guy was being really aggressive on the road and laid on his horn and I flipped him off and then I realized how guilty that made me feel. And you know, like now I'm not going to do that again, even if somebody is being a jerk, you know, because I spent the entire day feeling like I was a terrible person for flipping somebody off.
Yeah.
Now, of course, if you have a sort of like a different moral compass, which everybody does, then your threshold for that is going to be different. But yeah, I think that you do need to step outside of your threshold once in a while to understand like where you don't want to go.
So then can I do agree, like you have to cross the line to figure out where the line is in the first place, right? So
Mhm.
as you get older, you or I forget it now and then. But are we now starting to construct our base personas? Like these are the things that we are now molding, so to say. Like you won't do this, so that's almost taking a shape of a face now, right? Metaphorically speaking, like you kind of have a bit of the persona mold it where it's like I won't flip somebody off in these circumstances.
Yeah, I think it's closer to me just understanding what it is makes me feel what makes me feel morally upright. And you know, morality is kind of subjective, at least personally. But within my own moral code, flipping somebody off while I'm in the car is just not something that I like to do, and it's taught me that that's not somebody who I want to be. Now I can certainly do it, and you know, like it's happened before, but like it's not somebody who I would like to be, and if I can help it, that's not somebody who I will be in the future.
Yeah, but there still may be a bit of usefulness to that ability, even
Certainly. Well,
even
yeah, you don't want to
if
become a pushover and, you know, like, and yeah, and that's where all the balance comes from. And I think this comes from like, you have to, so we decide to be these types of people with the understanding and faith that the rest of the population has the same desires. And that comes into disharmony when we run into somebody who has different priorities than the assumed ones in society. Um, so, like, you know, this concept of me being, you know, a better person, yes, I do that because I am assuming and I have faith that most other people that I engage with in society will be projecting towards that aim as well. And I think that's really important because you're not always going to run into that. And sometimes you will find people who want to go against the grain, and that's okay. But we still need to maintain the faith in the larger society that we all want to operate at some sort of cohesion.
yeah, and coexist in a way that still pushes our civilization forward, right? And
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
like we're all sort of on the same boat, sort of thing. But it's important to know what to do when there's somebody who's trying to, I don't know, become captain of that boat. I don't
Yeah,
know what the
upset the apple
metaphors.
cart. Upset the apple cart. I mean, like I think we've all gone through this before. When somebody, you know, like say you're in line at the grocery store or at Starbucks or whatever, and you know you have that one person that comes in a rush and you can just feel their energy and everybody snaps their head towards them, and you know they're short, they're mean, they're not, you know, nice to anybody, they're, you know, complaining, and everybody's looking at them. And we all have that sort of like psychic connection because we're all thinking in our heads and sort of demonstrating, hey, you're not following the social cohesive rules,
Yeah.
we don't like that, you know. And I've
And then
seen people get cussed out for doing stuff like that, you know, like
yeah, that's when somebody else puts on that, bad
that
person
persona. Yeah.
persona and then goes after that person who initially started it. And hopefully that short mean person isn't that's not their base persona, hopefully.
Right. Of course.
Hopefully there's just, a bad day or who knows, right? Um, because these things, I think, these negative qualities can, if not made conscious, can start to eat at you and
Mm-hmm.
change your base persona in a way that where you become your shadow self. You
Yeah.
become
You become
that,
possessed.
yeah, that unconscious thing that you've repressed for that whole time instead of finding appropriate moments to channel those sort of darker sides, right? And we're being real light here when we say dark. You know, being short and mean with somebody is pretty light on the dark side of things.
And we need to bring back like festivals and Saturnalias, man. You know, like we need to bring back like these mass rituals, or I guess that's what like, you know, Coachella is and Burning Man is. So I guess we still have some of that. But yeah, there definitely needs to be social release valves. And I think that we kind of, especially over this last year when we've had so little social release valves, we've kind of realized that we took a lot of the ones that we had for granted. I mean, going to sports games, going out to eat, going to the bar with friends, like these are social release valves that allow us to you know, to cut loose a little bit so that way we can, you know, go in the next day and participate within the social cohesion. You know, it gives us a little bit of opportunity to step outside of the bounds of acceptability, and so that way we can be refreshed and go back into that sort of more rigid structure.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, swear, I like, for me, I've started, like, at the very base of my personas, I've started off with, like, an Apollonian, like a very academic, studious one during the day. And then all that structure and rigor leads, and this is all based off of Nietzsche's work, leads to a Dionysian type persona where it's more partying, more loose. I don't really watch my words as well. Just trying to have a good time, right? And both sides have their various shadows, right? Because I can be quite a stickler for things and be very mean if I see somebody acting outside the rules, or if I perceive them to not care about the study or the craft that we're working on, the Apollo side of me. Whereas the Dionysian side of me, I can definitely take that sort of go with the flow, have a good time way too far, right? Where it gets me into socially rough situations. We would just describe it as that. But the overall building of these personas and these masks, I've found as I've integrated them and try to make one large, I guess, one mask that I can wear both day and night, is it's a good psychological process. And those valves that we're missing all stop people from developing themselves psychologically, whether they're aware of it or not.
Oh yeah, well, absolutely. We all know that you can't repress your feelings and stifle your emotions. It only leads to further damage of the self. So, yeah, I think it's definitely necessary that when you're constructing a persona, especially one that you want to wear for a long period of time, that it keeps in mind the things that you do need in order to maintain that persona. And sometimes the things that you need to maintain that persona don't fit inside the box of what that persona, you know, is built for.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like this, like also look at like working from home type things, right? I definitely believe that there is an energy that you have when you go into the office or you go into any workplace, right?
Yeah.
And that can add to your professional mask. Whereas when you're working from home, you kind of let that mask maybe slide a little bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because you're now trying to merge these two masks from like your daytime actions at home with working with your professional mask, and it doesn't always work out that well.
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely can see that. You know, they were saying something like productivity during like the beginning of COVID was, you know, like increasing because everybody got to stay at home. I'd like to see what the numbers are now after a year of it. I'd like to see if there's any change in the productivity numbers. You know what I mean? Because I can't imagine that they're I can't imagine that they're as high as they were when it started.
And it's for like I can only speak from a software development point of view, but there is something nice about just being able to focus on a problem without having to worry about oversight, right? Because developers need peace and quiet, even if they have headphones on and listening to music or podcast or whatever. They need a space where they can just problem solve. Um, So it does run in like you have to almost construct that yourself at home. And if you're not, I guess, developing a lot of software at home yourself, then that's where your productivity starts to slide. But if you like Ayla was talking about building, like if you want to be a calm person, do you just want to, get cups and get like what is it, good vibes, strong minds, something, I don't know. Like that's all altering your environment so that you can alter your persona to get that mask on in the right way. So
Yeah.
that I think is the piece that ends up becoming missing when you're working from home as a software developer. Now I just feel like I'm rambling, but that's kind of what I was just like. There's a certain energy at work that you just don't have at home, and I
Oh yeah, well, I definitely understand that. And there's also certain professions that heavily rely on um, uh, codependence or interdependence, I guess. Whereas things like coding and stuff like that are heavily solitary for the most part. Except when you have to, speak with task managers and stuff like that. The process of coding is very solitary. So, yeah, there is an interesting thing in that even if you are being solitary, but you're being it among other people who are being solitary, there is still something that you're getting from that.
yeah, and I think too developers have to um, wear two masks, right? They have to have that solitary problem solving, and they have to be able to talk in a stand up or in a meeting type. So they have to
Mm-hmm.
become social in a
Mm-hmm.
very short time frame, right? And
Yeah,
it's
it's almost like they
uh,
have to be complete human beings. You mean I have to
oh,
talk to people too?
hold on. Are you saying I'm not
Yeah, you
human?
can't just
Because
talk
that's
to
the dream come
computers.
true. Oh
I know, right?
man,
Just become an
it's such a
android,
bummer.
fully
This whole
synthesized
time.
into the machine.
Oh, I can't wait. I
I know.
can't wait.
Yeah.
But no, so like trying to circle back to this pariah persona thing in this heated argument because her point was that it went against just social cohesion that um you wouldn't have a or I wouldn't have a lot of friends, and that was her argument is that you don't want to be a pariah because you won't have friends, you won't have the same opportunities, networking, blah 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 blah.
Hmm.
um Whereas my point of view is like that's great, but you need somebody to critique the group. Like every kingdom had a jester, right? Even
Yeah.
if it's just one person, that's a pariah type persona,
Yeah.
but that is held sacred.
Yeah,
You,
absolutely. Well, and I think we were even having this conversation last time we spoke after the show. I think we were talking about outsiders, right? The necessity for a society to have outsiders because they're necessary for identifying danger. They're going to be the ones that always find danger first because they're cast out of society. So they're on the perimeters of society and they're the first line of defense for any sort of invading force. Now, be that invading force of an army or metaphorically invading force, it's all the same. These sort of outcasts of society usually are the harbingers of something that's coming to invade. So it's an interesting thing. Like, society does need outsiders, does need the people who are on the fringes, because those people alert us to when things are crumbling.
the the human on the wall.
Mm.
Oh, there's some Marvel stuff I could jump into with that.
The Watchers and all that. Yeah, yeah,
Just
totally.
the original sin stuff too. But no, yeah, I would agree that like they are since you're already placed on the fringe, you get to walk on that wall between um, either invading forces or what is socially acceptable and socially not acceptable,
Mm-hmm.
and can mediate that. You can start to push back on what people either like. You can define like, hey, we're being a little uptight. You should loosen up a bit. It's not that bad. Or it could be like, whoa, this is way too. We got to button it up here, here, and here. And I
Yeah,
think it's
and sometimes in order to rejuvenate a system, you need outside ideas, and that's where these people come into play. Is that you need somebody thinking outside of the system in order to bring something to inject life into it again.
for sure.
So yeah, yeah, I think there's always a utility in the sort of the outlier.
For sure. And I bring up like this mask thing. Actually, Persona It's a Latin word that correlates to the old Greek word for the acting mask.
Mm.
So it kind of just jump randomly around. So it is like, like the thing, like the whole world is a stage and we're all actors.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that's where I think the idea has its origin, and actually in Greek Bibles ends up becoming something completely interesting, where there's like this, it ends up meaning like a divine person.
Mm. Yeah.
This persona. So like this, I think proper development of the persona, no matter what role you play, and that doesn't, by role I don't necessarily mean something that you can attribute to a title, right? Like a job title. Like I guess something like that. Pariah is a role that one can play to bring in new ideas, or to be the outsider, to
Yeah.
be the scout, I guess, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some people don't get to decide it, but some people do. Yeah, for sure.
It's a pretty heavy word, man. That persona word.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, and you got to think that most of these sort of root words that we use every day have deep etymologies, and this concept of like identifying humans with the divine is very important too, right? It's a concept that we've been doing for millennia now, because we've recognized its importance to give ourselves something higher to achieve or live up to, I guess you could say.
Something to aim at. Some aim high stuff.
Something to aim at, exactly.
So not to recap it, so far we have ego, as these are like the base materials of, say, a persona. We said ego, and I do agree that that's one of the materials. And then chosen moralities, whether they be chosen by yourself or have that deep biological root to them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's anything else that goes into molding these personas?
Oh, certainly. I mean, there's probably multiple other factors. I think imagination plays a factor, because you can't create a persona if you can't imagine it first, right? So I think imagination is a huge factor in personas, and that's why people with vivid imaginations tend to be entertainers or artists, or people who are trying to get that image out of their head and onto something else. So yeah, I definitely think imagination can be a big play. Even maybe not ambition, but ambition's the wrong word, but it's similar to that, where it's like the aiming towards a something new, or towards something higher, or it doesn't even have to be higher, but just something different. This sort of the pursuit to
like a drive of sorts.
Yeah, drive is good. I think drive, that's probably inappropriate. Yeah, so I would say drive is probably another part of it as well, because like you can either make a paper mache mask, or you can make a steel mask, and I think that has to do with your drive.
For sure. Or you can make a really nice paper mache mask, though.
Yes, yeah, you can make they do great stuff with paper mache. I'm just saying, if you want it to last a million years, steel is probably better.
So imagination, I can definitely see that, because you have to know to mold towards like that not aiming higher, but like a higher thing you see, and then the drive to actually build the mask out to its completion, right? And that can take, if we're talking about the work of a lifetime, which is what Jung thought, building, or the process of individualization, or finding your persona, or building your persona, I guess, is kind of separating out conscious, unconscious, figuring out the path to the self is, then these things can take seconds, days, months, years, decades to find the materials and build them. And they're all sort of immaterial, right? Just weird to think about.
Well, and I think even, perhaps the best persona is the one that takes your entire life. Maybe not, but maybe there is something, about creating the ultimate persona that, you may not ever fully get, but you can you can get closer to.
Like a ever shifting infinite persona. Have you seen
Yeah,
a
yeah.
have you seen a scanner darkly?
Yes, yeah, great
Yeah, I
movie.
was thinking about that when like the scanners are just kind of in their police department or whatever, and their
Hmm.
face is always shifting and moving.
Yeah, kind of like that. Definitely. I see that for sure. Like this, it's, because that's kind of the way life is, right? It's kind of amorphous, and time is a little bit amorphous, at least our role in time. And, so like things change, and being able to project a ideal persona out, and then, realize that over time that ideal is constantly evolving itself. And, maybe that's the closest thing we can get to the divine.
Yeah, because I think that's what we're all like. I think that's what you're trying to build towards, right? We're well. I'll get into things like yeah, we'll get into like the divine aspect of it because that's like you build this persona to get to like your shadow self, or you mold this all together to find yourself or the self, and that has divine aspects to it for sure. But so I guess back to these materials: drive, imagination, morality. Um, what was the first one we went over?
Ego.
Ego.
Ego. Yeah.
Yeah, ego. What about the material, like the actual your actual appearance? Can we just call it appearance?
Yeah, I guess aesthetics. Aesthetics is probably a good word, because can kind of integrate what you would like yourself to appear as, and then what is aesthetically pleasing to the larger society as well, because I think both of those are a factor.
No.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I would agree.
Yeah.
Like some cool stuff.
There's a lot
That's,
there, man.
yeah.
It's almost like it's its own science or something.
Don't tell anybody.
Right. Oh, hey, Ayla, are you dead? We haven't heard from you since the dog barked.
No,
Uh-oh.
I'm not dead.
Okay.
I'm well alive.
Thank you. Thank goodness. I was going to have to like open the door and realize that you guys were gone.
Oh man, terrifying.
Be a
I know.
compelling episode.
Oh, man.
Well, I think I'm happy with this conversation. I think those five, like I think those are good five core things to build multiple personas around, right? Because
Mm.
ideally, well, I don't. This is where I don't know. I don't know if ideally you want to have one mask that's always shifting, it's always changing, or if you want to have multiple masks that you can put on and off at will, or some mixture of both. Like try to create this thing that's always shifting, but in case things go sideways, you have other masks that you could put on and step into a different persona when you need to. Like more
I think
concrete.
I kind of think of it as like a video game, right? So it's like at your level 1, you get the wood mask. At your level 10, you can get get the steel mask. At level 20, you get the mineral mask or the gem mask or whatever. And by the time you reach that level 100, you get this sort of like quantum, sort of like I don't know, continually transforming mask, like the one that you basically don't have to do anything, and and just run amok during the whole game.
It's the end game.
It's the end game thing. It's the thing that it's the OP weapon that you can use to just go crazy at the end of the game.
Yeah, and I think too. I think you have to be a. I think it's so like in World of Warcraft, there would be certain items that you can only wear if you were that type of craft. Like if you based if you had your profession in that thing. So like I was a jeweler for the most part in WoW. It's because it played well for being a priest, and my race was like Draenei, so I was like a alien thing. But it played naturally well, so I was able to create gems or cut gems that say only jewel crafters can cut. I think it's true with these molding of masks. I think if you really see it like that video game metaphor, I don't think it's something that like that everybody can. Yeah, I don't think you slay a dragon and you get this mask. I think you have to collect all the crafting materials and craft it yourself.
You got to build your skill tree, and you only have a certain amount of points that you can give into any certain skill tree. For sure.
That's what we call time. in years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Like if you give yourself the cheat for, unlimited skill points, then yeah, you would have an eternity to do whatever you wanted. But we only have a finite amount of time. So you got to build out that branch of the tree that you really want the most.
All right. Well, that's all I got.
Awesome. Well, that was a wonderful conversation. Ayla, do you have anything that you want to say? You've been kind of quiet. I'm sorry that, we kind of took over the conversation there.
There are podcasts where I talk more and some where I am just a lovely participant like our lovely guests. To all who are listening right now, thank you so much. That's what I got.
Yeah, well, that's nice. I definitely second that emotion. Thank you very much, you guys, for listening. We very much appreciate it. We hope that you enjoyed this conversation. I certainly did. I think it was wonderful. Thank you, Mike, for bringing this one to us. Awesome. And thank you guys for listening. Please consider giving us a subscription on YouTube. It would really help us. Consider liking this video if you enjoyed it. It helps us get through the algorithms. We're trying to get to 20 subscribers. We're at 17. We got 3 to go, ladies and gentlemen. I said that I'd buy a $10,000 PA system at 20 subscribers. I might have to dial that back a little bit because we might actually get to 20 subscribers. But at some point, I will get a nice PA system.
Go make 3 fake accounts.
Yeah. But in the meantime, we just appreciate that. Until next time, Cognonauts, you stay out there, and we'll catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Later.